and 3 are based on state priorities, and we are required to meet all the state priorities within those goals. The one thing I do want to say, based on the LCAP that you just talked through, that based on that document and based on this budget summary, that we would have a positive certification, and we have the statutory 2% reserve built in. So you need to know that.
Which has been how long since we've had that?
Since second interim. We just got it back. But it was 3 years before that. But so in the May revision, we had the governor confirmed his proposal for 28.05 funding up the gap. He also talked about buying down some of the wall of debt, and part of that wall of debt includes the STRS proposal. And the STRS proposal really says, you know, retirement-wise, the state can't sustain our teachers' retirement system, so we're going to spread the love. We're going to fix a little bit of it. This, in terms of the state, teachers and employees will have to pick up a portion of it, and then districts will get the bulk of that. So we'll have to fund more of our employee retirement. And PERS is the same way, although it's different system, we're still picking up more of the PERS costs.
Would that be?
They're still hashing that out, but it could be an additional $3.5 million for next year, and over the course. Go ahead, Dr. Miller. I saw you get up.
Well, I think probably a better way to think about that figure is the governor's current proposal in terms of the impact on school districts would be $66 per student. So we'd have to take $66 back out of the bank, or round numbers, you want to multiply your $66 times 57,000 students or thereabouts. That begins to give you an idea of how much money that is.
So what wasn't addressed in the governor's proposal was Common Core implementation, was SBAC technology, as well as other mandated reimbursements in the wall of debt. And then, just like Dr. Miller said earlier, the budget process is not concluded, so they're still in budget negotiations. So for our budget assumptions for the 14-15 budget, we did assume the 28.05 revenue for 14-15. And that is a change since second interim, because at second interim we were still looking at 21% gap funding. So that's an approximate $14 million plus to the revenue side of our books. The other adjustments that we looked at are increased costs for STRS and PERS. The Affordable Care Act, we've kind of been looking at that, but we still don't have a firm handle on how many people would be eligible for benefits if that law, you know, as it's implemented right now. So we're still monitoring to see who would be eligible, because, you know, every day we use substitutes and every day that number changes. So it all has to do with how many hours you work in a week and whether you sustain that number of hours over a certain period of time. So we're monitoring that closely. But we do have an estimate of a little over $1 million for that item, just for Affordable Care Act. Increased special ed costs, we've assumed those to the tune of almost $3 million next year. And then in the out years, you'll see in the multi-year projection, we lose ROP funding to the tune of about $4 million in 15-16, and then QEIA funding goes away in the 16-17 school year. So those are going to be additional hits that we will have to absorb into our budget. And then, of course, Common Core block grant that they gave us last year in last year's budget has to be fully expended this year, so we'll be out of money in that grant.
Isn't there effort to get the Common Core funds renewed for this year, and where's that at? Do you know?
I think that's in the Big Three discussion.
Oh.
Yeah, that's CSBA for one. AXA, I think, for another, is arguing to do that. But as one of the legislative staffers said the other day, the arguments about how much revenue is going to be shown and how much goes to one time and not. So that's the back and forth issue. CSBA actually said to reduce the deferrals payoff. In other words, we get money back from deferrals, but cut that in half and use the money for Common Core. The problem is that when you do some of those machinations, what happens is They're pushing it to the out year, and remember, in the out years, we may not even have money.
Right.
And so there's a real interesting dance that's taking place. And again, none of us really know until the big three come out of the room and tell us kind of what they all decided.
On the RLP funding issue, is that a shift to funding linked learning instead, or just taking it away?
Go ahead. You're doing great.
What's that mean? I got the shovel, I'm digging deep. And,
No,
Means you've been here 2 years.
oh, okay, yeah, there you go. ROP has more or less customarily in the last 10, 15 years kind of moved to the counties. Counties have covered that and they receive funding for that. In LCFF, basically, that money went away because remember, categoricals went away. So all the money the county gets, they can spend and they don't have to spend it for ROP. So statewide, counties are backing out of ROP, and they, if you're even getting a year or two out of it, that's a good thing. And so the impact is that it's then shifting back to local districts. If you want ROP, you have to pay for it. And what do we have to pay for it out of? We have to pay for it out of LCFF. So that's a transaction that's taking place, and basically because the county's not getting special money anymore, it moves back to us, and we have to decide whether that's how important it is compared to all the other things that we do. But there's no special money because it was a categorical, it was a reimbursable, and that's gone now.
Okay. Looking at this, excluding the QEIA funding, seems like we're going to be getting 14 million, and we are going to be hit with, let me see, 8, 12, 16.5. So then we'll be at a negative of 2.5 million.
well, no. But your assumption is right. We added 14 million to the revenue projection. And now we're kind of making these assumptions that, this is what STIRS is going to come in at. And so those are real dollars. But we didn't, and when we had the 21%, we still had some reserve because remember, we didn't know what LCAP was going to bring. So we didn't spend all those dollars. So this is just the increase since second interim, but it's not the total amount of new money that we'll get for next year for LCAP.
So what's the total amount of new money?
It's about 58.6 million.
But that's a guess.
Yes, because it's
Because-
not settled yet.
Well, and there's several things that are not settled. One is the amount of money is not settled. So that's one guess. Another guess that's very significant to all of us is the size of the STRS problem and solution. And so that's kind of the negative that's a takeaway. So you
Right.
can guess like whatever you want to guess on the plus side, but then there's also the guess on the negative side, and that was a new piece in the May revise. It had not surfaced really in the January proposal of the governor. So again, there's lots of different balls in the air until we know what is happening with the state budget in the middle of this month, which probably next week we'll begin to really get clarity on that. There's just lots of moving variables at this point.
And the STRS and PERS, those costs are not just
One time.
for this, they're long term.
Ongoing.
And
they're gonna
they're
be-
increasing.
Oh, yeah, they're increasing, exactly.
And so in SCRS, basically the long-term projection, and nobody's really fought about the total outcome. The only fight is how long it takes to get there, is a doubling of the district cost.
Yes,
So it's 8.25 now to go to 19.1%.
exactly.
Okay. So at this point in time, this is what our multi-year projection looks like. And so you can see that we have adequate reserves at the very bottom where it says economic uncertainties. That is equivalent to 2%, 2% reserve based on our estimated expenses for that year. But you'll also see that we're deficit spending in the base year, and that is on purpose, a little bit.
On that slide, what does other financing sources / uses mean?
That means that special ed contributions, to those, that's